Do you need to be fit to be successful? I'm Samuel Law, and this is the Growth Apprentice. And today we will be discussing how fitness and success go hand in hand with one another, and how fitness will help you to be more successful financially. Okay, so let's say that you're someone who wants to have financial prosperity. You want to have those those blessings. You want to have those resources. You want financial freedom. A lot of people want that. And so then a lot of people look at that and they say, okay, I'm going to have to, for the next 10 years, right? I'm going to sacrifice my health, and so that I can have this freedom of, financial success and financial prosperity. And so they'll stay up late working on projects. Maybe they'll start a side hustle and they will do all these things. Maybe they get fast food because it's quicker. And they do all these things to, get freedom, financial freedom faster because, typically finances is the largest cause of worry and of stress for people. And so like, dude, if I could give, 5 years of my life, 10 years of my life, but then I don't have to worry about money anymore, and then I'll get in shape. Then I'll focus on that. It seems like it's not an unreasonable trade-off. But then, you go 10, 20, 30 years down the line, and maybe you have built some financial success. It's definitely possible to without being fit, but then your health is, it's not optimal at all. It is, your body is deteriorating and your mind is deteriorating, and more importantly, your relationships are deteriorating. And so then, is it better to sacrifice that financial freedom so that you can have, you can take care of your body? And I don't think that you have to do either. I think that you can do both. And this is all, personal philosophy. This is all my personal views and opinions on it. We'll see how it plays out in the long run, but I am confident that I can take care of my health my entire life and still have financial financial prosperity. Okay, so first of all, if you ever heard of Steve Jobs, I'm guessing you have, and I might be misquoting here, but he would talk about how he would never make important business decisions after 2 p.m. It was like that window in the morning, that was when he would make them, and he recognized that that mental clarity, it was gone after 2 p.m. And so then he worked for that period. And then after that, it was like, no, you can't make decisions. You can't ask him anything. He's not going to, make critical decisions regarding the company after that. It might have been a different CEO, but I know there's someone who did that. And so, if top CEOs are doing this and they are saying, okay, look, I recognize they're so in tune with their body that they recognize that this is something that's important, then maybe that is something to take in consideration, that, your mental clarity is not going to be on top all day long. And, that exercise, that taking care of your body, that, blood flow to your brain is going to allow you to make better decisions financially. And then another thing is going to be the better relationships, right? If you have, this is one of my favorite quotes, and it's that you're never going to be able to pour from an empty cup. If you are someone who cares about relationships and you want to give to others, and you want to give, let's say you have a company, you want to give to your employees, and you want to lead well, but your cup yourself, it is not full and you haven't been taking care of yourself, how are you supposed to then do that? How are you supposed to show up in your family life? How are you supposed to show up professionally if you've got nothing in the tank, right? And so if you say, oh, all the needs of the business come first, the needs of my family, the needs of my associates, they come first, and then it's me. And I think that that is actually, that it's almost selfish to do that. And here's why. And maybe people will disagree with me on this, but I think you need to, in some ways, put yourself first so that you have the capacity to put others first, right? And so if I work out every morning, if I eat well, if I get to sleep on time, if I spend time in scripture, I am going to be more mentally clear. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to be able to react and respond to situations better. I'm going to be calmer. But if I don't have any food in me, I've been sleep deprived, the chances that I'm going to be able to respond my best to others and I'm going to be able to maintain and build those great relationships with people is way lower. And so I want to set myself up for success. And so then regarding relationships, right? If you want to have good relationships with people, you need to set yourself up for success. And physical health is a huge proponent in that, right? Because how else are you supposed to give to others if you're not taking care of yourself, right? And so part of the reason I prioritize my physical health is because I want to be able to give to other people. And so then back to how that relates to financial success. If you aren't taking care of yourself, it's reasonable to assume that your relationships will suffer because you're not going to be able to show up at the same level. And so then you're going to go home and it's going to be stress at work. It's going to be stress at home. It's going to be stress within yourself, right? You got to consider the relationship with yourself too. And so then what are you giving that all up for? Like, doesn't everything stem off of relationships and you're giving it so you can have a little bit more money, which I think is actually, you're not going to make as much money. And so if you're not taking care of your health, your relationships will suffer. And in turn, your business, your finances, your career, it's going to suffer too. Remember, this is all opinion. I'm 17 and I have never been formally employed, right? I run my own business and we'll see how it turns out, when I'm older and I get married, but I believe that you need to take care of yourself physically. And then next up is I feel like there's a religious aspect to this, right? I feel like I believe we've been given our bodies and we have, been given these by God and we are image bearers. We're made in the image of God. God designed us and he wants us to be happy and he's given us commandments and, instructions and guidelines on how we should live and how we should take care of our body. And I don't want to just honor God, in my faith and in my beliefs. I want to honor him in how I use my body and how I utilize it, right? Because people will often use the excuse of, oh, you only live once as a reason to, maybe not take care of your body. But if you only live once, shouldn't we be taking the best care of your body? If you only get one, then wouldn't you want to, optimize that? Wouldn't you want to take the best possible care of it you can? And so I think it is a way to honor God is taking care of your body. And so then maybe you're like, okay, I understand that it is important. My relationships will be better. My mental clarity is going to be better. I'm going to show up better. But then how do you get from that state of, if you haven't been going to the gym or working out and you haven't been eating healthy, how do you make that shift from, you're over here and you got to get over here? And this is a tough one because if you haven't been building those beliefs, that you are someone who shows up for yourself, and you are someone who takes care of yourself and you don't trust yourself yet, then how are you supposed to do that? Because you don't have the data to prove it, right? And so I would say, oh, you gotta start small. I think everyone knows though. That's the thing. Everyone knows the steps that they need to take to change. Like if you ask someone who is out of shape what they could do to get back into shape, I am sure they could give you some solid ideas. Like there's principles. Dude, you just gotta move your body. You gotta eat real food. It's not complicated. I think fitness is actually very simple. I even hesitate to say that it is difficult. I think it would be harder in the long run not to take care of my body, right? Because you have two kinds of pains you can choose from. You can choose from, current pain, which has a whole bunch of benefits, the current pain of working out and putting your body under that stress and that tension, or you can go down the line and you can get that pain later. And you're not hacking the system or anything by refusing to take care of your body. Like, you're not benefiting yourself, you're not benefiting society. And so then how do you shift from, I am someone who makes excuses, I'm someone who doesn't follow through, I'm someone who doesn't take care of my body. How do you shift that to someone who is, I show up for myself. I am consistent and, I do care about myself. What does that process look like? Because, we discussed how people already know the steps that they need to take. And so then I think one of the most important things, and this isn't my own philosophy, this is kind of coming from my dad of what he's taught me, is that you have to you have to change the identity and then everything else shifts. If you try to change the habits first, the identity will still be over here. It will still be where it was. And eventually, the identity is a magnet. It's going to pull everything back to where it is. But if you change the identity first, then it's going to pull the habits and the mindsets to where the identity is at. And so then you got to look at and you got to identify, what are those false beliefs and what are those, what do I believe about myself that might not actually be true? Alex Hormozy says that if you lack confidence, then you need discipline, and if you lack discipline, you need evidence. Something that shows basically everyone is disciplined in some way, and they just need to look for areas in their life where they have been disciplined before. And so someone might say, let's say that I play video games for an hour every morning. I'm super disciplined at it. I'm super consistent at it. And I say, oh, I've got no discipline and I can't work out. You showed consistently you can wake up every morning and play video games or something. Like, you are capable of doing the thing every day and consistently following through. And so, look in your life for evidence that you do these things. And then, there's just, it annoys me sometimes. There is this societal belief around fitness that has been created that always say it's a bad thing. I feel like that's what most people get taught, and that's the beliefs that they get installed into them. But, I would encourage you to challenge that and ask yourself, is working out, is being under that tension, is that a bad thing? And you might be like, oh, I'm going to be sore. I'm going to be all of these things. But your body will adapt, and, your body might be in a state of not taking care of yourself, but it will adapt and it will get used to it. And one day, believe it or not, you'll go to the gym and you won't get sore anymore. And you'll realize, wait, I actually enjoy working out. And so then I would look in your childhood and I would say, like, were there times when, a parent or, someone I trusted said something negative regarding taking care of your body? And then, examine that and say, is that true? Is this actually the truth? Because just because someone you respect says it, just because someone you admire says something, that does not make it true. It could be true, but it's not always true just because your parents say it or just because, someone trusted says it. And, a lot of the times it is, but I would encourage you to, examine everything and then see how that lines up with, the teachings of the gospel and the truth there. Because, if you want to find the truest information, dude, just look to the scriptures. Right. And so, examine, is this true? Is this not? And I have been very blessed to be born into a family that, values taking care of health, and, we value that. And so maybe you were, maybe you weren't, but, look at, hey, do I have friends that are encouraging fitness, or do they encourage, stagnation, passivity? I don't know if stagnation is a word, but do they encourage, being passive, and do they look at this in a negative way? And you probably will think that everyone is like that. I know I definitely have. I do this all the time because I've got an incredible social circle, and we will, talk about taking care of our bodies. And I get it in my head that, oh, this is how everyone thinks, right? But it's not how everyone thinks. And so, if you have that being reinforced, is it possible that it's not true, but you believe it because you consistently have it, right? I've heard this quote from, I think, is it No, that's the Michael Bay guy, Richard Paul Evans. Orson Scott Card. Yeah, he says that you question all of your beliefs except the ones that you really believe, and those ones you never question. And so, right, start questioning them. Start seeing, is this the truth? Then, search for truth, because once you have identified that what you believe is false, it's kind of harder to stick to that. And then you can start building that evidence and you can show up for yourself consistently. And, I feel like people try to overcomplicate fitness sometimes, but it's like, dude, just figure something out, right? I remember my very first time going to a commercial gym. I went with my grandpa, and there was this private training area that you're only supposed to go in. It was this box you're only supposed to go in with a personal trainer. And I was like, "Oh, sick, bro! There's a pull-up bar in there." I didn't even see the signs. So I'm in there. I'm doing like pull-ups, and then I go out and I see a sign that says like, "Oh, you're only supposed to go in here with a personal training client." But like no one, so I had no idea what I was doing, as you could see. And now I've become pretty proficient in the gym and working out, and now I know what now I know how to do the things I want to do to a degree. I've learned it. It's better. But when I first started, I had no idea what I was doing, and so I just went in there. I started doing push-ups. I didn't understand I started doing pull-ups. I didn't understand you weren't supposed to be there. But no one came up to me and they were like, dude, you're so stupid. Why were you working out in there, right? This is one of my favorite things, right? Everyone is so focused on themselves. And you can prove that because you yourself are probably focused on yourself. They're so busy thinking about themselves. Oh, dude, what are people thinking about me? What are people doing? But everyone is wrapped up in their own world, right? And so then you can just go out and do your thing, go do your workout, do whatever needs to be done. And chances are, unless it's like some absurd thing, if you do something embarrassing, if you do something wrong, dude, no one's going to care. They will forget in like 5 minutes. Right. And so then just go do the thing. And so maybe if you are hesitating to start that, you believe that, you'll be embarrassed. But is it that bad to be embarrassed, right? And like I look back and it's a funny story for me that I was working out in the personal training area. And so, to finish off, I would say that fitness is definitely required to be successful. And if you have a version or a definition of success that doesn't include taking care of your health, dude, I do not want that. I don't want that version of success. I would rather make less money, but be in amazing shape than, make a ton of money and just feel awful all the time because, what if we only live once, wouldn't we want to take care of our bodies? Right? Okay. So yeah, this episode was kind of a tangent, kind of a rant. Not a rant. I don't really use that vocabulary. But this one, I believe that fitness and taking care of your body, that it's something we're supposed to do. And we need to stop looking about it and talking about it as if it's a negative thing. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. I'm Samuel Law, and this is The Growth Apprentice.